I think if somebody is doing something that is useful to the rest of society, I think that's a good thing. Like, it doesn't have to change the world. Like, you know, if you're doing something that has high value to people, and frankly, even if it's something, if it's like just a little game, or, you know, some improvement in photo sharing or something, if it has a small amount of good for a large number of people, I think that's fine.
All right, last question. 3 pieces of advice to entrepreneurs. What are your 3 pieces? I'm an entrepreneur, so you can share them with me.
Okay.
How would you advise me?
Well, first of all, I really need to give some thought to, like, how can I provide advice that would be most helpful? And I'm not sure I've given enough thought to that to give you the best possible answer. But I think certainly being focused on something that you're confident will have high value to someone else, and just being really rigorous in making that assessment, because people tend to, a natural human tendency is wishful thinking. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things? You know, so you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. I think certainly extremely tenacious, and then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, you know, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. And then all those things improve the odds of success. I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
You're worth it.
Some of them are going to sound like, well, you've heard it before, but it's, you know, worth re-emphasizing. I think the first is you need to work, depending upon how well you want to do, particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hard up, we had just one computer, so the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, like, I mean, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say, particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, you say, like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. The other thing I'd say is that if you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they're focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company.
Not to think critically enough. I mean, critical thinking is a skill in short supply, where people take too many things they assume too many things to be true without sufficient basis in that belief. So it's very important that people closely analyze what is supposed to be true and try to build up. Try to say, let's analyze things from first principles, not by analogy or not by convention. If you assume things are true by convention, which is actually what most people do, then it's difficult to gain insight into how things can be bettered. So in any argument or any sort of train of thinking, you want to make sure that the underlying premises are valid and applicable, and then in reaching a conclusion, that the conclusion you're reaching is necessarily driven by the underlying premises and the interconnection between those premises. That may seem like a really simple thing to say, but most people don't do that. So it's really the foundation of rational thought. Let's see what else. I think also people tend to overweight risk on a personal level. It's one thing if you've got, a mortgage to pay and kids to support, and that if you were to deviate from your job, that, well, how are you going to feed your family and pay the rent? And okay, that's understandable. But let's say you're young and you're just coming out of college or coming out of high school or whatever. What do you risk? You're not going to starve. I mean, it's really, certainly not in any kind of modern economy. It's so easy to earn enough money just to live somewhere and eat food. You could, very easy to do. So I don't know what are they afraid of? They're mostly afraid of failure, I think, but people should be less risk averse when there's not much at risk.
You're a young father, 5 kids.